Hello, beautiful humans. Welcome back to the Bitcoin Stoa for another episode of Innovators. Today, I'm speaking with Mario Gibney from Ledn to learn more about their Bitcoin mortgage product. So as a reminder, the Bitcoin Stoa is a community-funded platform. If you enjoy listening, you can support the project by sending some sats to the QR code on our homepage at bitcoinstoa.com. And you can also stream sats using something like the Breeze wallet, which has a really badass podcast feature. And at the end of the day, the best way to support this project is just to share it with people who you know that might be curious about Bitcoin if you benefit from the content. Current Moscow time is 2032 at 7:15, 2:56. And with that said, Mario, welcome back to the Stoa.
Thanks for having me back on. It hasn't been too long.
It hasn't been too long, no. So Mario's been on the show before.
When I do a second appearance, it's like, oh, we've seen you like, a year or two ago. How's it been since then? But I think it's been like a month or two, right?
Dude, in Bitcoin, that's like in Bitcoin years, that's like a year or two, maybe. Things move so fast.
Yeah, like a lot happens. Yeah.
It's almost like we have this calculation for dog years. We need that for Bitcoin years. It's like, is it 7-1? Is it 5-1? I don't know what it is, but it moves fucking fast. So Mario's been on the show before. If you want more background on him or on the work he's doing at Ledn, feel free to listen to our first episode. But today we're focusing on Ledn's newest product, which I'm very excited to hear about, which is their Bitcoin mortgage. So we're going to talk about why it was created, the problem that it solves for people, and how it kind of works by going through a mock situation of the customer experience. Maybe the first thing I'd like to ask is, what's it like working on a team that's literally pioneering financial products for a Bitcoin world? Like it's pretty cool.
It's super cool. No, I'm like, honestly, I'm really grateful to be here. And it's to be honest, it's a lot of chaos working at a startup. I remember when I first got into the space, like when you gotta get to see how the sausage gets made. It's like, oh, okay. But no, the team here is like stupendous. I've learned a tremendous amount. I have a great mentor here, and everybody's really it's been a very, very stressful a couple of weeks. Just just with pushing this product out, we kind of had an accelerated timeline for the announcement, and there's always other stuff kind of being rebuilt in the real time. Just that's comes with the turf. But like everybody here just seems to be crushing it, and it's great. People are really supportive and collaborative. We don't have many egos here, so I might as well say we're hiring right now. So come check out Ledn Careers if anyone's out there. But yeah, and at one point I think we should get better at bragging about is we're above 65 people now, and we have almost no churn here. We only had 2 full-time employees that are no longer with the company now. And I think that's got to be close to some sort of a record for the tech industry, because usually there's quite a bit of a churn. There's a lot of people coming and going, but the team here is pretty tight knit, and I wake up grateful to be here every day.
Powerful, very powerful. Yeah, and I mean, building out Bitcoin infrastructure, financial products for a Bitcoin world is like a really important part of this whole system shift, right? Like, if you have cars but there's no roads, cars aren't that useful. And right now, if your car just appreciates in value at a radical pace, then it is useful. But at some point, you want to be able to start driving the car, right? You want to be able 100%. To start getting some utility from this thing you have, and now you want to be able to use it to your advantage. So I think this whole notion that, I'm someone who holds my savings in Bitcoin. My long-term strategy is to never sell my Bitcoin ever. And so, conceptually, this notion of a Bitcoin mortgage solves a big problem for me, because if I want to buy a home, when homes return to their utility value and get demonetized, because it's crazy right now, I want to be able to collateralize my Bitcoin instead of selling my Bitcoin to generate a fiat down payment. And so, I think there's probably a lot of other people who are starting to approach this mindset. And so to me, this is like this is a powerful solution, regardless of whether it's, this is in its infancy. You're literally pioneering this world of Bitcoin mortgages. So I'm very excited to see where this goes and how it evolves. But, how long has this product been in the works for, in terms of from the very beginnings of when the Ledn team started saying, oh, maybe we should look at mortgages to now? How long is that timeline? And what was really the impetus for creating this? Like, what was the need that you saw in the market that drove wanting to put in all this work and do all this crazy stuff to really dial this in? So yeah, how long has the process been, and what's the why for a Bitcoin mortgage?
Sure. The why is a really interesting question. But For the length of time, I actually wasn't involved in the early stages. I kind of found out about it at a company comparatively late and was like, oh, this is cool. I'm excited to talk about this. But it's been like, um, I would guess it's been something around a year, but that's gonna be a question I'll have to ask or it's gonna add on
That's all right.
for.
Won't hold you to it.
Yeah, I mean it's been at least like several months. But yeah, the origin of the idea for this was actually not a mortgage to buy homes. It was a way to improve upon our existing Ledn loans. So yeah, if I want to give the full story, I just a quick overview of our existing Ledn loans. Like the original Ledn product was, you collateralize Bitcoin with us, and we're able to issue you a loan in dollars at 50% the value of the collateral. One of the challenges here is that the Bitcoin price is very volatile. It sometimes does have very, very fast crashes. And because of this, if you get to 70% loan to value, where the value of the Bitcoin has declined such that the amount owed on the loan is 70% the value of the full collateral, we will send a call out and say, listen, you need to top up your collateral and get it down to a healthy level. If it gets to 75, we make another call. And if it gets to 80%, we are forced to take action and close the loan by selling 80% of the collateral. And the reason it's got to be at 80% and why there's no grace period is that Bitcoin price moves very fast, and we wouldn't be able to guarantee a sustainable product if we had it at risk level such that there was a risk it could suddenly get to past 100% LTV. And that's a big challenge with our product. It's why we caution our users, say, listen, like only take out a Ledn loan with a small portion of your Bitcoin. We strongly recommend you keep some in your BTC savings so you can quickly top up your collateral. But despite that, what if you want to go camping for 2 weeks? There is a challenge there. And we had one of our earliest clients, earliest and best clients, really wanted a solution for this. He wanted to have some sort of Bitcoin backed loan, but that was a lot more forgiving and tolerant of price swings. And this client had purchased some real estate, not far from within Ontario. That's where we're starting this program. And it was pointed out that actually, real estate is pretty stable collateral. It's, you can come and check it out and you can see it's worth what it's worth. No matter what happens to, the building on top of it, the land is still going to be worth something. And so the kind of origin of the idea was figuring out a way, hey, how can we combine the Bitcoin collateral with a more stable form of collateral to allow for a more kind of stable and robust loan structure? And that's the origin of the Bitcoin mortgage. So with that intro, like I'll explain specifically how it works. Essentially, it's the Bitcoin mortgage is a blend between existing Bitcoin backed loans on the market and real estate, where half the collateral is Bitcoin and the other half of the collateral is real estate. And what this means is that because the price of real estate tends to be much more stable over time. Like people talk about bubbles in real estate and kind of crashes in real estate value, but compared to Bitcoin, it's quite, these crashes are like, 20% over the course of a year. Like in Bitcoin, that's like, it sneezes in 2 weeks and it could do that, right?
I mean, I should say that over time, the trend is that Bitcoin is becoming more stable, but you're right. Yes. I mean, it's not uncommon.
We're not there yet, though.
No, it's definitely right. Less. I mean, I don't know. This whole notion of a black swan, it doesn't happen until it happens, and it doesn't happen frequently. That's obviously something that people always have to keep in mind. But yes, I see what you're saying, where real estate is much more stable over time in terms of price than something like Bitcoin. So that makes sense.
Yeah. And so what we do with this is that 50% of the collateral is Bitcoin, 50% is real estate. And again, we issue a loan at 50% of the total collateral. So that means 100% the value of either collateral individually. So the easiest use case to understand for this is if you own a stack of Bitcoin and you are interested in purchasing a home, but you do not want to sell any of your Bitcoin for a down payment, or perhaps, maybe you're retired or you don't have income and so you don't qualify for a mortgage. Maybe your credit score is...
Let's do this with some real numbers because I'm very curious.
Sure.
I looked up the average. I'm in Ottawa, Canada. which makes sense considering you're launching this in Ontario. I just looked up the average home price in Ottawa. It kind of blew my brain up because I was like, holy shit, it like really hit home how crazy things are right now. So as of December 2nd, the average home price in Ottawa, which is comes from an aggregate of homes and condos, like all dwellings, is 612,000, which is an increase in 20% from December 2020, which is like, that's kind of scary. But anyway, let's just call it 600,000 even.
Well, let's say half a million.
Pardon?
Let's go with $500,000.
Let's go with $500,000. Okay.
All right.
$500,000 house is what I want to buy. I have my savings in Bitcoin. I don't want to sell my Bitcoin. And let's say, I want to put 25% down, which is on 500 is 125 grand. And let's say I have Bitcoin's at 60K Canadian. I have 3 Bitcoin. I have $180,000 right now. I want to put down 120. I would have to conventionally sell 125 grand of my Bitcoin, put that down as a down payment. How can I use a Bitcoin backed mortgage to avoid selling my 3 Bitcoin? And how does this, walk us through sort of the customer experience end to end of how this would work?
Well, first of all, you're going to need more than 3 Bitcoin for a $500,000 house. You will, the total value of the Bitcoin you collateralize has to equal the total value of the real estate. Okay. So we don't provide enough for a down payment. We provide enough for a full purchase of the house. The reason for that is that if the real estate is collateralized with us, it can't be collateralized with someone else for a traditional mortgage at the same time. So if you have $500,000 worth of Bitcoin, you come to us and say, I would like to buy this $500,000 home. We have to go and appraise the home, make sure its value is, what you say it is. And then we take your Bitcoin as collateral. We issue a $500,000 loan. The property is purchased and the property is added to our collateral. And that's it.
We have a $500,000 home. We have $1 million in collateral. And
500K from Bitcoin, 500K from the home, and then a $500,000 loan. So one thing that's different from our existing Ledn loans, our regular Bitcoin-backed loans, is that there are interest payments for this mortgage. We don't charge any monthly interest payments with our existing loans. The interest simply accrues and you pay it back whenever you're ready. With the mortgage, there will be monthly interest payments required. And we're starting off with a 2-year term. I know some people have wanted longer terms. We would absolutely love to add those in the future, but for the initial launch of the product, we're talking a 2-year term. And then
after, assuming most people own a home more than 2 years, after 2 years, you simply reassess the value of the home, reassess everything, and then essentially create a new 2-year chunk for the next 2 years.
Yeah. Or, if hopefully at that point in time, maybe we have a longer mortgage available. It's possible there could be the option to simply roll it over into a regular Bitcoin backed loan. If, that was something we talked about if there wasn't sufficient demand for the product. But based on the initial response and the waiting list that we've already accrued, we don't think that's going to be a problem. So at the end of the 2-year term, you can roll it into another 2-year or whatever timeline is available. You can change it to a Bitcoin backed loan, or you can pay back the amount if you want. Okay.
Question for you: if say in 2 years things keep going at the same pace, it's real estate is accreting at 20% per year, which I think is there's issues with that, but let's just set that aside. So now after what's 10% of 550? So now after 2 years, my $500,000 home is now worth 600,000. Would I be able to essentially recalibrate things such that I can take some of my Bitcoin out because my home was appreciated? Like what would that look like if in 2 years my home is $600,000? How does that change things? Can I lean more on the real estate collateral and reduce my reliance on my Bitcoin collateral?
So actually, you don't have to wait 2 years. What we're going to do is we, again, this isn't, so keep in mind, actually, I should have said this earlier. Everything I'm saying on here, this is as the product is currently being implemented. But by the time we launch to broader markets in Q1 2022, there may be some slight adjustments as we learn things with our early clients. So just a heads up for everyone listening to this.
Sure.
But what we're looking at right now is that—
For timestamp, December 22nd, 2021.
There you go, yeah. That's right. Still, we're in the distant past, people. 2021 still.
Exactly.
When the Bitcoin mortgage was but an announcement. Right. So at the end of each year, we are planning to offer a clause in the terms where at the end of each year we can appraise the home to find its value again and see what's happened with the price of Bitcoin. And if suddenly, the more likely scenario there is that, over the course of 1 year, the value of real estate tends not to change too drastically. However, over the course of a year, the price of Bitcoin can change very, very drastically. So this is more likely to be an issue for the Bitcoin you've collateralized. But what we're looking at is at the end of 1 year, we would appraise all of the collateral. And if you're over collateralized, we would be happy to readjust and release some of the Bitcoin back to your control. And again, if the yeah, like that's kind of the main mechanism. And so we would allow that once a year, I guess, and then of course, at the end of the 2-year term, if you're going to roll it over into another loan, then it would be, of course, to be reassessed there since you're technically opening another loan.
Now, what would be the threshold for like, it's like a 1-year lock-in where it's like, okay, we set it, it's a 2-year term, but each year it gets reassessed and reevaluated. What happens if Bitcoin goes down 50% within that year? What is the emergency threshold to have to reevaluate and essentially recollateralize or readjust things?
Well, the cool thing is actually 50% is probably safe. You're probably okay. So again, it's best to compare this to existing collateralized loans, Bitcoin loans on the market. So for ours, I said before, 80% was the threshold at which we have to take action. There's no grace period. We have to close a loan if you get to 80% LTV. With the Bitcoin mortgage, if we just look at the loan compared to the Bitcoin collateral, if we ignore the real estate collateral a second, we're looking at we're kind of probably going to be able to tolerate up to a 300% loan to value of the dispersed loan to the Bitcoin collateral, meaning that even if the price of Bitcoin crashes by up to 67%, it would have to crash by 2/3 so that the amount we've loaned in dollars is 3 times the amount of Bitcoin collateral. That is the point we're looking at where we would reach out and request a top up. And the cool thing there is, and it's not a threshold like with existing Bitcoin backed loans where once you hit it, we got to take action. We hit that point and we can offer a grace period. We're looking at 2 weeks right now, where you have 2 weeks to top up your collateral and bring it back down to 100% LTV. And again, like I've been saying 100% and 300% LTV, but it's actually less than that because, of the total collateral, the real estate is still there. The fact that the real estate is still there is what allows us to be so much more generous with our thresholds and the kind of time window for you to top up.
Yeah, because the real estate's kind of like a shock absorber, right? It's like the stability anchor that allows things to be buffered a little bit in terms of Bitcoin price fluctuations.
So that's one of the things that's really cool about the product is that you get best of both worlds. You get the stability of real estate when it comes to the health of the loan, and you also get to hold your Bitcoin and enjoy kind of any crazy price rises that may happen to accrue during that period.
Now, in terms of payments, so you mentioned that I'm buying a $500,000 loan. I put that up as collateral. I put $500K in Bitcoin as collateral. So I have $1 million in collateral backing a $500,000 purchase. What I'm paying each month is the interest to essentially service that loan. Is that correct?
Yes.
Like I'm paying whatever the interest owing each month is what I pay. Now, what kind of rates are people looking at in turn? I'm not going to hold you to this, and obviously it's probably varies a lot. But in that scenario, if I was on your waiting list and I was one of the first person to get the mortgages, what kind of interest rate am I looking at? And that interest rate would be on the $500K purchase, correct? On whatever loan was issued.
That's correct. Yeah. So when you're paying the monthly interest payments, you're just paying the interest. You're not paying down the principal at all. Right. So that's a good point to clarify. Regarding the interest rate, I can't throw out any exact numbers, but I can say it's going to be in between the interest rates for your typical mortgage and your typical Bitcoin-backed loan. And it's going to be close to the Bitcoin-backed loan interest rate at the moment. The reason for that is that essentially the cost of financing Bitcoin is much higher than it is for financing real estate. Real estate is very, very long. It's very, very well established. Real estate's been around a very long time. There's been a lot of kind of pipes built for it, whereas we're still in the process of building out that infrastructure for Bitcoin. And that's why our loan rates have steadily come down over time, and we're very hopeful that they will continue to. But at the moment, because this is a blend of the two products, the interest rate is going to be in between. It is going to be closer to the rate for existing Bitcoin-backed loans, mainly because that is the infrastructure we have built out. At Ledn, we have been working really, really hard to be as efficient as we can in terms of financing Ledn or Bitcoin as collateral. And we're very good at that. And that's what we will essentially have to rely on more early days. As time goes on, we are quite optimistic that the rates will come down and we'll get closer to existing rates for mortgages. But for the time being, you're looking at in between existing mortgage interest rates and Bitcoin-backed loans. probably closer to the Bitcoin backed loan rates, but definitely lower.
Yeah, and I mean that kind of makes sense to me. It sounds like this more resembles a Bitcoin backed loan in terms of how it's structured than a traditional mortgage. But I would imagine that over time things will sort of balance out on the continuum so that things approach more of a, like anytime you're pioneering something, you have to play it safe, right? You have to like explore and figure it out. Well, like, how is this actually going to work in practice? And I'm sure the feedback loops will be very quick initially. But essentially, if you're, let's just say, right now, I believe what you charge is 100 points a month, basically, like 1% a month on average for a Bitcoin backed loan. Is that correct?
It's less than
12% a year.
that. Yeah, well, right now there's a 2% admin fee when you open a loan, and then it's 9.5% interest, and so it's I guess it's 11.5%. Which, when you consider compounding, it actually comes out to a decent bit less than 1% a month. But yeah,
Okay,
those are the rough
but
numbers.
let's just use that for numbers figures. So
For simplicity's sake, sure, let's call it 1% a month. Sure.
So on a $500,000 loan, that's $5,000 a month is what I'm paying. I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So $5,000 a month would be my interest payment on a $500,000 home. Now that home written? So Ledn is holding the Bitcoin collateral. That home is fully registered in my name as the buyer. So that is owned by me with Ledn having a lien on it.
Yeah, that's going to function the same way as an existing mortgage. Like, you own the home, but the lender, in this case Ledn, has a claim on it should you default.
Understood. How has the process of learn like did you ever think you would learn the microscopic granularity of mortgages?
Did you see my tweet on this?
I did. Yeah.
I've never had an interest. Like, okay, so Adam and Maurizio, Ledn co-founders, actually have a background in mortgages, and our legal team, has been working, for real estate for a while. I have never had any sort of interest in this, and it's like I've never owned real estate. I've only rented my whole life. And it's been fascinating. I've never thought I would learn this much in the last month about how kind of mortgages works and the challenges behind them, and why rates are the way they are. And it never occurred to me, for example, existing mortgages, they're actually not really I'm talking traditional mortgages. They're not really backed by the real estate. They're kind of backed by your cash flows and your income. I didn't realize that before. Yes. The real estate is sort of a backup, but they won't issue you a mortgage if you don't have income. If your credit score is really bad, you can.
I mean, that kind of makes sense. How are you going to pay for the mortgage if you're not making any money?
Yeah. Well, and the thing is too, the mortgage is also it's issued at very, very close to the value of the collateral, right? If you have 20% down payment, that means you're getting an 80% loan to value based on the mortgage collateral. So they're going to want, cash flows to show that you have a steady income. I understand where that comes from, but it also means that a lot of people get locked out of the market, who otherwise should be able to, qualify for this kind of thing. So this is why it's not just for people who have Bitcoin don't want to sell it. It's also for people who have Bitcoin and maybe they've retired early because they have a bunch of Bitcoin they don't want to sell. Maybe they've retired early for other reasons. They just happen to have Bitcoin. Maybe they have poor credit score because they pulled out of the banking system when they realized we're building this alternative. So it's kind of cool in that we're able to service a chunk of the population that you don't even have to be a Bitcoin mega bull to necessarily find this product interesting. It's and this is honestly, this relates back to your earlier question. What's it like working at Ledn? And I kind of talked just about the team here because I know in recent times I've just been feeling really grateful for my colleagues. But one of the cool things is building services and getting people access to financial services that they wouldn't otherwise have access to. This is this is just another way we get to do that. And it's yeah, it's really I'm getting all amped up talking about this. It's kind of exciting. It's it kind of it gives me a similar feeling to when I went down to El Salvador a few weeks ago and got to meet some of our Ledn clients from Latin America, which is really cool because there are people there that we've been told we issued the first loan to people that just didn't have access to credit of any kind where they were, but through Bitcoin they've been able to access that because they live in countries where the banking system just to put it generously doesn't work that well, but morality has in reality is just collapsed, and now we get to kind of bring access to real estate to. Yeah, and I don't want to get ahead of myself here. Like, it's, at the moment, like this is going to service people who are quite well off because, if you're going to purchase all property outright, but like that's how these products start. That's
Right.
how, that's how cell phones began. And like, like any new technology, for example, is going to be first accessible to wealthier people. But, we're going to learn from this. We're going to iterate. We're going to hope be able to bring the cost of capital down over time. That's the goal. And hopefully service more and more people that, for whatever reason might not, might not be properly serviced by the existing system, and that's what Bitcoin's all about. That's why I got into this.
Yes, well said. So basically, you have a PhD in mortgages now.
Well, I wouldn't quite go that far.
Wouldn't quite go there. Yeah, I think
I know a lot about mortgages for someone who's never opened a mortgage.
Fair. Well, I just opened a mortgage recently on like a small unit. It's like we basically a partner, my business partner and I bought this unit 4 years ago now, when the condo was first being built. That's like the unit I'm in right now. But I saw this firsthand because my business partner has a pretty good equities portfolio that's with his bank. I don't, because I sold it all and put it all into Bitcoin. And so when I applied for the mortgage, essentially the bank is like, well, you need to let me know, like, show me your assets, right? What are you worth? What assets do you have that we could essentially take from you if you default? And my main one was Bitcoin. They're like, we don't acknowledge that as an asset. I was like, really? You don't acknowledge the world's best asset as a fucking asset? This is crazy. But that was a prime example.
It's such amazing collateral because you could liquidate it so fast, and it's like, okay, sorry, I cut you off there.
No, that's okay. I was kind of dumb, but you're right. It's like the most pristine collateral on planet Earth isn't acknowledged as any form of collateral whatsoever by traditional financial institutions. So I saw it firsthand, where I had to work a lot harder to show my cash flows and to show my assets, than someone else who, has their assets in conventional vehicles. And so I saw it firsthand, where it's like way harder to get a mortgage if you hold your holdings in Bitcoin, because it's acknowledged as worthless, basically. But getting to this notion of, okay, Bitcoin is the world's best collateral. It's liquid anywhere in the world. It's getting more stable. Based on that, do you see long-term in the future Bitcoin-backed loans being essentially a race to prime because it's such good collateral and obviously you have to mitigate for fluctuations in the price, right? You have to make sure that people's loan to value isn't, Bitcoin still moves quite drastically in relative terms to other things. But over time, as it gets more stable and as people start to realize like Bitcoin is the best collateral for anything, because if you don't pay, I just sell your Bitcoin and I can sell it anytime for a fairly predictable price in short bursts. Do you see it as a race towards prime long-term for Bitcoin-backed loans, or am I being naive with that?
I mean, I'll be personally pretty shocked if we don't see interest rates come down a decent amount in the coming years. I don't think I have the expertise enough to say, and like, again, these are long timelines here, so making any sort of prediction is hard. So a race straight to prime is tough to say with a tremendous amount of confidence. But like, I mean, it's gonna be pretty weird if rates don't come down a lot more, because as you say, this is like, it's pristine collateral. And the other thing is, as there are mainstream financial institutions now looking into accepting Bitcoin as collateral, and that means a lot more infrastructure and pipes built out, a lot more efficiency in terms of the financing. As we talked about before, the price volatility of Bitcoin has been decreasing over time. That helps make these types of products more less risky to get involved in, and the less risk there is, the better rates you can offer. So yeah, I mean, I can't make any guarantees, of course, but I think we're going to continue to see interest rates come down, in my personal opinion. Getting to prime, I think that's a longer ways away. I mean, the other thing that can happen as well, though, is we may see more of these blended loan products. Like, I don't think I know we are the world's first Bitcoin mortgage. We're the only one. We were first, and
kudos to you
our
guys.
first, I should say.
It's so cool that you're Canadian too. That's like,
but absolutely, yeah. It's well, I mean, there's a lot of advantages there too. Like, we're very grateful to be where we are in terms of the regulatory environment tends to be more stable than a lot of other places. So that's been that's I'm quite pleased that we are here. I was saying before, though, I don't know if we're the first blended Bitcoin collateral product for the market. I'm sure someone out there has done some sort of blended collateral involving Bitcoin. But I think that might be something that kicks off more. Like there are other forms of collateral out there that people may want to use. I actually had someone already asking me if we would do, Bitcoin backed car loans or something. And I'm like, that's an interesting idea. We should, these are things we talk about sometimes. So I think that's going to be an interesting thing, maybe more in the medium term, while Bitcoin is still, growing into its own. Because we do have a ton of growing to do. People are like, I'm very optimistic about Bitcoin, but I like, we have to be realistic that it takes a lot of time for the infrastructure to be built out. In the meantime, maybe we get to see more blended products on the market that offer more favorable rates.
Yeah, and I must say, I mean, this is seeing your Bitcoin mortgage be released at this point in time, to me felt like this is way earlier than anything I expected. But it's kind of like El Salvador was earlier than anything I expected. And the sooner we start the experiment, the sooner we collect data and can refine these things and build out more and build bigger pipes, build more reliable pipes, like you said. So I think it's someone has to start it. And the person who starts it is going to have the most work involved because there's the least data. But I love that Ledn has kicked off the party.
We are learning a lot, though.
Yeah.
Like the questions people are asking, and we did a lot of work in the background being like, okay, what are people going to ask about this? What are we prepared? And you're never going to be prepared for all the questions that pop up. And some of them are like, oh no, we should have thought of that. And some of them are like, that's a really interesting question. They want to use it that way. Okay, we gotta think about that. There are people out there who, for example, own real estate and want to get into Bitcoin and want to do this mortgage from the other side. Where like, I own a house. Can I use this product to acquire an equivalent amount of Bitcoin? We can't, I've been told I shouldn't promise that that's going to be available at launch, but from an operational standpoint, that should be even easier for us to facilitate. So sure. I don't see it. I'll be surprised if we aren't, if we don't have people using it for that in the near future as well. Yeah.
And I had this I kind of brought this up to a friend, a fellow Bitcoiner, and he's like, well, why wouldn't I just take a Bitcoin backed loan out for the down payment, put the down payment down, service the loan, and then take advantage of being able to borrow free money from my bank? And I was kind of like, well, clearly that's another strategy, right? There's going to be the strategies you can adopt are literally only limited by your creativity of being able to run through scenarios. And so yeah. I'm really, and I kind of spotted, Preston mentioned that he's doing, I think a podcast with Maurizio about the mortgage backed product. So I kind of cheated and looked at all the questions.
You got to publish quickly if you want to.
I'm firing this up today. I mean, I don't know.
You might be second actually. We first was my own podcast. I could plug us the Unhashed podcast. We had me on there talking a little bit about it. So I think we were first out the door.
But top three. I'm happy with that. But yeah, I mean, it was very interesting. I love what Preston does. He's like, okay, I scheduled something with this person. He has a big following. So he's like, what do you want me to ask? And I'm like, this is perfect because I can just cheat and look at all the questions people asked. And, there were some specific questions I was going to ask, but I think at this point, it's more like, I want to understand this at a high level so that I kind of get an accurate grasp of like what is being offered. Do you think over time, and you kind of mentioned this before, but do you think over time things will move from, if we look at it at a continuum, Bitcoin backed loan as it currently exists, mortgage as it currently exists, clearly we're on the Bitcoin backed loan end of that continuum to start with. In terms of conversations at Ledn and the pipeline ahead, like, is the goal to move more towards the traditional mortgage structure? Yeah. Okay.
100%. Yeah. Like I said, we have all the infrastructure built on our end for financing the Bitcoin collateral. Like that's done. We can very, very easily repurpose what we built for Ledn loans and boom, do it for the Bitcoin mortgage. And now it's a matter of us just getting as efficient as we can with the mortgage side of things. And we're very optimistic we'll be able to bring these loans more in line with mortgages.
Now, if I'm say I'm like the chief at Scotiabank, and I'm like, well, we got to get into this Bitcoin thing. Instead of starting from scratch, why don't we just go visit Ledn and see if they're willing to partner with us? Is that something? Have you ever kind of run through the model of if that comes about? Is it better for Ledn to just be like, nope, you got to learn yourself? Or will Ledn ever, like, to me, the first Canadian bank that does it, it makes sense for them to partner with Ledn on their end. I don't know if it makes sense for Ledn on Ledn's side. Is that something that's ever come up in conversation? Because clearly you're laying down a whole new world in the world of finance.
Yeah.
And clearly banks are not good at adapting to new innovations, right? Disruptive innovations. And theoretically, Ledn is a replacement. Like the only thing that Ledn doesn't offer that would essentially allow me to transition my whole financial life to Ledn is a Bitcoin backed line of credit. I don't know if that's in the pipeline, but that's like that solves a big problem for me personally. But theoretically, Ledn is a replacement to banks. So I don't even know if it would be of value to even partner with banks, although, clearly they have something to offer too, where they have a shitload of
Yeah.
customers. Is that something that's ever come up conversation?
Yeah. I mean, we often talk about it. Partnering with existing businesses. To further bridge the gap. The other thing is like um, sometimes you just got to do it yourself.
Yeah.
Like I would bring attention to what's going on in Wyoming. They're making it easier for businesses to get banking charters themselves. And so I think there's going to be a combination of both of these going on in the space. You're going to see partnerships between existing cryptocurrency companies and fintech startups and existing financial institutions, and you're probably also going to see successful cryptocurrency businesses simply start doing more of those activities themselves. And yeah, I don't think I can get more specific. I will say that everything you've said has all been discussed a lot internally, but it's a bit too early for me to say anything more with more details. But I would, keep your eyes peeled in the new year.
Cool. And then in terms of rollout of this, you're starting in Ontario as like, I guess,
Ontario, home
and is that
base.
starting this year or starting officially in January? Well, I mean,
Oh,
we're like 2 weeks
we
away from
are.
it.
Well, there are select clients in Ontario that I don't know if we've actually finalized the first mortgages. We may have, but that's like we're kind of setting up the first ones as we speak,
Okay.
in Ontario, and then starting in Q1 2022, we're going to start expanding into different regions in Canada and the first states in the USA.
Okay.
So if you are interested in this, especially if you're North American, I mean, like if you're in another country, we would absolutely love to hear from you as well. And because it gives us an idea of where we can start keeping an eye on regions that we may kind of need to start doing more research to understand, the how things work in those jurisdictions. But if you are interested in this product, please go to our sign up page. You can go to mortgage.ledn.io. Ledn.io. So just mortgage.ledn.io. There's, it's a product page that gives you kind of an overview of how the mortgage works, and there's a waiting list. So all you have to do is punch in your name, email, where the location of the property you're interested in, and the approximate value of it. And if we get a ton of people interested in buying property in Texas or Tennessee, for example, then we're going to look at expanding there so near in the future. So yeah, please let us know if you're interested in this and where you're looking. But yeah, so at the moment we're starting to work we're already starting to work on the first ones in Ontario, and then more broadly in Canada and the first American states. Hopefully by we're targeting Q1 next year.
Okay. Amazing. Last question that I have, and it's a heavy one, but feel free to answer it at like a zoomed out level with a high level overview. But one thing I noticed in the questions that were asked of Preston on his Twitter, and clearly a concern that all Bitcoiners will have, and a concern that they'll want eased by just through understanding, is the custody of coins, and this whole notion that, like at a high level, what is the custody strategy? If I am giving 500K in Bitcoin to Ledn to secure this home that I'm buying, this loan for a home I'm buying, what is the strategy and what are like the precautions taken by Ledn to securely custody and ensure that all the fault lines have kind of been covered, to make sure that I can sleep at night without fearing that Ledn's going to lose or something like that, my coins? Like, what is the custody strategy that gets used at the institutional level with Ledn? Explained in whatever way you want, just to kind of give people a little snippet of information there.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is where our experience with the existing Ledn loans comes in handy, because we had all of that built out already. Essentially, you collateralize your coins with us, and a portion of them are held in cold storage. We use BitGo as our custodian. We are also extremely well capitalized. ourselves, like as Ledn, we just raised 70 million, and we already had a significant stash of reserves before then. Most of the coins are lent out. So this we lend them out through our trading partner Genesis Capital. Genesis is the biggest lender in the crypto space. They're mainly B2B. So we lend our coins out through Genesis. They lend it out to a variety of institutions, and it generates yield. This allows us to bring the interest rates down on our Ledn loans and on the mortgage. There are people who actually who have requested that they would prefer a version of this product where we didn't loan the coins out. The original version of the Ledn loan, we actually you could just see the coins in a UTXO that they hadn't moved. So even though we had full custody over it, which is kind of required for collateral, like there's some different models like Unchained Capital. The client keeps one key, and then Unchained Capital keeps one key, and then a third party keeps another key. But this is you're still giving up custody, and that the person with the claim on the collateral, the entity with the claim on the collateral, and the third party they have to be able to take it if you default. So the giving up custody is it's inherent to the kind of model. But we have had people request a version of this where the coins aren't lent out. We did find early on that the majority of our clients actually preferred to have a lower interest rate and trusted us to lend the coins out responsibly. And we've been doing this for 3 years. We have never lost a single Satoshi of client funds. We're very well capitalized. We're careful who we lend the coins out to. There, I believe, if not all, most are lent out through Genesis. Highly transparent. They publish quarterly reports. And they are very careful in who they lend their coins out to. They lend them out to institutions that have many, many other assets that will be able to cover any sort of, they're not going to default on the loan, even if, their trading strategy that requires them to borrow Bitcoin goes south. They have many, many other assets to cover that. Genesis Capital themselves are very well capitalized. And then just to, as an extra layer of transparency, we do proof of reserves every 6 months. We partner with Armony Noah LLP, which is an accounting firm, and we anonymize our data and then expose our books to them. And they go through and they make sure all our assets and liabilities are in order. And if you had any sort of balance on the Ledn platform at the time the proof of reserves is implemented, you'll get a unique kind of hash ID, basically an anonymized identifier, and then you go to Armony LLP and you'll be able to see in this Merkle tree they produce that, yep, your funds are in this account. And you just make sure it's matched. So that's a way that we are able to distribute trust. That we're operating on the up and up. And so there's a lot of stuff we do. There's a tremendous amount more in terms of just operational security, the way we work internally. How much and part of that is just keeping client assets safe, and part of it's also privacy. Everything is on a need to know basis internally. I cannot access any data that I don't strictly need for my job. Sure. And our work devices are under very, very strict control in terms of what apps we can and cannot use. We build the tools we need in-house. We don't we really keep external contracting to a minimum as pertains to we'll contract out a graphic design work, for example, but anything that has to do with client assets or client information is kept very, very close to our chest. And and we do have I think it's I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that we have one of the top records in the space. We've never lost any client funds, never leaked any data. And again, this is just us being able to leverage our existing Ledn loan infrastructure. All of this stuff was already in place, and we just need to repurpose it for the Bitcoin collateral. We often still talk about offering a version of the product where the collateral does not move, because people often ask about this because there is an additional layer of risk there. But again, the trade-off is it would require a slightly higher interest rate, and we have found that most people prefer the lower interest rate to that. But if there is enough demand, let us know. Hit us up, say, and we would love to offer both options, and then people could choose.
Yeah, I think this, in the Bitcoin community, people love to dwell on this whole notion that if you're taking any counterparty risk, there's a risk there. And I agree, counterparty risk is the thing, but there's also a broad spectrum of counterparty risk based on the reputation and reliability and the strategies used by the counterparty. And so I've kind of moved beyond the point where it's okay, I don't want to risk catastrophic loss with like the bulk of my assets, but some counterparty, well-informed counterparty risk that is minimized through me understanding the strategies that the counterparty uses. Like that makes a lot of sense. That's how the current world works. And I don't think we have to always be zero counterparty risk, because then you literally miss out on a lot of innovations that are going to be created.
Well, it's like I said, there are some use cases and tools that inherently rely on custody, and
Right.
and you don't have to use this if you don't want to. Like,
Sure.
if you are not your keys
Yeah,
on
no
your
one's
phone
at
type of
Ledn like
person,
forcing
like
people to get mortgages.
we are targeting like Ledger users and being like, hey, come leave your coins with us. Like, no, that'd be poor form. We get why you're doing what you're doing. All power to you. But we're here if you want to finance your coins, and yeah.
And in terms of the proof of reserves, like I found that to be a really powerful thing that you offer in just in terms of transparency, right? It aligns really well with the Bitcoin ethos of full transparency, be able to like check yourself, don't trust, verify. Have you seen that proof of reserves model be replicated by any other companies? Because I think it seems unique to Ledn. I don't know if you pioneered it, but have you seen that replicated with other companies?
Yeah, I mean, we're not the first. Like, BitMEX, for example, did a proof of reserves. Because they actually do keep their coins in custody. It's kind of cool. They're able to do it a lot more directly than we were. Like, they don't require the third party. But of course, it's more of a technical process there. I believe Kraken did one proof of reserves like half a decade ago, but they didn't do it again. We're not the only ones. Nick Carter's been great at pushing for more proof of reserves across the industry. It should become a standard. I think we did have one of our competitors copy us after we did it. Guys, maybe copy us is unfair. Like, we weren't the first people who came up with the idea.
Sure.
But again, we were pleased to see that. We want more companies to do it because it's safer
Yeah.
for the industry as a whole. But it is so I think slowly a few more places are doing it. But in my opinion, it's not where it should be. It should be industry standard.
Yeah.
Clients need to demand this from the services they use, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean it's a very young industry, right? Like
Yeah.
it's sometimes easy to lose sight of the fact that like we are literally on the bleeding edge of this. This is brand new. We're figuring it out as we go. We figured out a good amount,
Yeah.
but there's a lot more to be figured out. There's a lot more understanding to come into this whole industry of like what are the standards, right? Because right now there are none, and it's almost like we're seeing right now different companies implement different standards on their own side, and then from that, I think we'll kind of evolve a consensus view of like, okay, well, clearly this is the best way to protect everyone involved. So maybe we should just make that the gold standard. And if you're not up to that standard, then you're not able to compete in this market. I imagine things will get there eventually. So
Yeah, I mean, again, a lot of it like it's markets and competition, right? If
right.
this is something that customers expect and prefer not to use companies that don't do proof of reserves, then you're going to get more companies that do proof of reserves. So vote with your wallet, right?
Yep, exactly.
Come
Well,
check us out.
yeah. Well, Mario, thank you for dropping by the Stoa, telling us a little bit more information about Ledn's new product. I think it is really, just really powerful to see these things in their infancy starting to be built out, because it's giving more and more utility to the asset of Bitcoin to people who hold it, and maybe even a bit more confidence to put more of their assets into Bitcoin, knowing that it will be able to be used and it's still worth something. Or like right now, like I said, I applied for a mortgage. My Bitcoin was worth nothing to the bank. But
Yeah.
at some point, instead of thinking, oh, I hope it's worth something to the bank, it's like, well, fuck the bank. They're clearly way behind. It's like, I'm just going to go to companies that do this. And so it's really cool to see. Like you said, if people want more info, is it mortgage or mortgages.ledn.io?
Mortgage, singular, mortgage.ledn.io. I'll
Perfect.
give you a link so you can put it in the description. Yeah.
Okay, powerful. Well,
Yeah.
thanks
And
everyone for listening.
yeah, the other thing I would just say once before is that like if you're listening to this and like if you haven't used a Bitcoin backed loan before, try checking it out. Like you can the minimum amount is $500 for one of our loans, so you don't have to break the bank to do it. And it's like you might be surprised at its simplicity and like how easy it is to use. And again, like it's really flexible. Like our existing Bitcoin backed loans don't require monthly payments. So you can just pay back whenever you are ready. You can do a Ledn loan to get or a dollar loan to get access to dollars USDC, or you can use a B2X loan if you want to use a loaned amount to double your Bitcoin holdings that you put in the collateral. But give it a look, check it out. Like even a small amount, just get familiar with the product. And I think that'll if you're a person who is interested in just like learning firsthand how why the two of us are raving about how good Bitcoin is as collateral, you'll get it. So that's one thing I would urge people to check out. And
Cool.
yeah, hit us up on the mailing list. Check out the mortgage page. That's it.
Amazing. That's okay. I mean, full disclosure, I do use Ledn. I use their Bitcoin savings account. I've had a really good experience so far. Everything is really very smooth, very intuitive. I haven't taken out a Bitcoin backed loan yet because I haven't had the use case. I'd rather just leave it in my Bitcoin savings account. But I didn't know that the minimum was $500. So that makes it, it's kind of like Bitcoin. It's like just touch it, engage with it at a very, with not very many funds, so that you can kind of reduce the intimidation of doing something big and make mistakes or learn the lessons on a small scale. So that's really cool. I might have to check that out. And yeah, I've enjoyed the Ledn customer experience to date, and I look forward to seeing how the Bitcoin mortgage continues to evolve. All the news coming out about that. Is there any pipeline for Bitcoin lines of credit? I'm just going to ask you that. You might not be able to answer, but I want to ask it anyway because that's a big one for me.
Yeah, I can't get any sort of date. It is something we
That's
talk
okay.
about, but it's not imminent in terms of release. That's definitely
Okay.
not the
Okay.
case.
That's okay. At least I got something from you. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for stopping by the Stoa. If you want to support the project, you can go to bitcoinstoa.com, some sats to the QR code on the homepage. Wishing you all a great rest of your day. Mario, thank you again for stopping by, and ciao for now, everyone.